is titled as Chennai, a biography. We have with us today V. Sriram, who is an entrepreneur who is passionate about the history and heritage of Chennai, which he has been chronicling since 1999. And he will be in conversation with Sadhana Rao, a writer and curator in the arts and cultural space. Over to you, Sadhana.
Good evening. A very warm welcome to you, Sriram, from cool Bangalore.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And a warm welcome to the audience. I'll just set the context for this for the session and the book. The book, Chennai, a biography, author Sriram has written a very nuanced portraiture of Chennai as a city. He gives us, he races us through the life cycle of Chennai from when it was a scattered set of villages to its current avatar. As I said, the nuanced biography is very inclusive of its history, its politics, its culture, ecology, geography, to its cuisine. He writes this with the sensitivity of an insider sitting in the inner courtyard, yet balancing it with a detachment of a researcher and an observer that he is. So for the session, I would request Sriram to read for 10 minutes certain passages from the book. We'll be in conversation and then we'll open the house to questions from the audience.
Thank you, Sadhana. Thank you so much for giving me and the book such a wonderful introduction. I couldn't have asked for more. I think the combination of being a member of the inner circle or the inner courtyard, as you put it, and being an observer came because I lived outside Chennai for a long period of time and I came back only in 1993. And thereafter, as she very rightly puts it, I did become a member of the privileged inner circle, so to speak, or the inner courtyard of that city, which I now call home. There are a few passages that I had suggested to Sadhana when she told me that I should read, that I should take up. And the first passage is about what we imagine Chennai to be, which is we all think that it is Singapore. So every politician promises that Chennai is en route to becoming yet another Singapore. And we always claim that, so Chennai is a functioning anarchy like all other Indian metros. And yet the average Chennaiite will say, well, we are at least not as bad as Bangalore. Rivalry with the closest metropolis is long-standing, but for a city that according to its political leaders is forever en route to becoming another Singapore, being better off than Bangalore is not all that much of a compliment. Then I come to this passage, which is about the corporation of the city, which is the oldest corporation in what was once the Indian Empire, begun in 1688. And sometimes you find that it works at exactly the same pace of a senior citizen, so to speak. The interesting point is that the city is quite used to getting along without an elected corporation council. The biggest such break happened in 1973 when the muster roll scandal broke. The cause célèbre came to light when advertisements for a film in the making began appearing in local magazines. This by itself was a routine matter, unlikely to attract attention. But what made the advertisement stand out was the photograph of the producer, E. Kannappan, who was a lowly clerk in the corporation. Subsequent developments are best described in the memoirs of Eric Strachey, the then Director of Vigilance, Government of Tamil Nadu. Now I quote, now producing a film takes a good deal of money and curiosity was naturally aroused as to its source. Inquiry soon revealed that a huge, simple and successful stratagem had been going on for a long time to defraud the electricity department of the Corporation of Madras. Here for several months past, a number of city fathers and municipal employees had together been helping themselves from the public till, with a lavishness which, as we discovered as the case unfolded, could only be described as vast. Their mode was simple. Muster rolls bearing the signatures or thumb impressions of hundreds of non-existent laborers had been used each month to draw large sums from the corporation treasury, and the money shared among those with more than 100 odd persons forming this merry conspiracy, unquote. Even the deputy mayor had affixed his own thumb impression against the names of several bogus workers. The modus operandi had been so successful that it had spread to all other departments of the corporation, conservancy, health, and everything else. So eventually, the scandal is detected, the corporation council is suspended, the trial begins and goes on. It went on in various courts of law till 1994. This was 1973 when discovered. Goes on till 1994 when the Supreme Court finally confirmed the convictions. It was said that the total value of the monetary loss to the corporation was 126 lakhs. And the trial, which went on for 22 years, had cost a further 45 lakhs. Of the 77 accused, several had died by the time the final judgment was delivered. I'm just coming to that. We have these saviors as well. So my ode to Traffic Ramaswamy. If at all there was someone who made everyone from political parties to ward councillors to local area officers and also the highest in the land nervous when it came to city's administration, it was a tiny old man by the name Traffic Ramaswamy. Having lived well into his 80s, this former mill worker shot to fame in the 1990s when he volunteered to direct traffic at Paris Corner, one of the city's traffic hotspots. The police was pleased and gave him an identity card. They were not so pleased when he began questioning them about their tacit encouragement of hawkers in the same area, which only added to the congestion. They liked him even less when he asked why they allowed political banners that blocked traffic lights to be erected. The corporation hated him because he began questioning the handing over of public spaces for political flag posts and kiosks and turning a blind eye when walls of private and public properties were covered with posters. Ramaswamy became a thorn in the administration's flesh as he went about fearlessly tearing down banners and posters minutes before the chief minister's convoy passed that way, thereby throwing black cat commandos, supplicants, ministers, officials, and the general public into a tizzy. He was not deterred by murderous attacks on him, one of which left his vision permanently impaired. Even when his family disowned him, he never relented. Ramaswamy became a familiar figure in the Madras High Court, where he was a frequent public interest litigant. There are times when it appears that the administration moved only because of Ramaswamy. The next passage deals with the creative city. In November 2017, UNESCO recognized Chennai as one of its 180-strong creative cities network. The metropolis was honored for its contribution to music. There was a spate of congratulations from the Chief Minister, Prime Minister, Defense Minister, and several others. The Chief Minister thanked the Prime Minister for congratulating the city. It was all rather ironic, given that the creative arts had always flourished here entirely due to private initiative. Then there is a long description of what it means. But once the tag was given, there was a minor debate among the intelligentsia on whether the city was really deserving of the recognition. This is true Tamilian humility. Are we deserving of this honor that's been bestowed upon us? No, we don't deserve it. Self-flagellation at its best. At its heart was the nagging fear that Carnatic music, the classical art form of South India, now more or less the fiefdom of the Brahmin community, would overwhelm the creative city recognition. Music must leave the auditorium, thundered an activist who was known more for the good work he does on environmental issues. A year later, all of it was forgotten. Nobody knew what to do with this tag anyway. Music in Chennai is something everybody takes for granted, and we have many varieties of it, each with its own adherents. There is a dedicated band of Hindustani music aficionados who still sigh over the memory of Pandit Ravi Shankar performing each year at the Music Academy on New Year's Eve and ending his performance with a New Year greeting. That, by the way, is complete exaggeration. The maestro performed only sporadically at the Academy, but he did have a large fan following. Film music, as anywhere else in India, has a large fan base and is divided between those who love only Hindi film songs, others who swear by Tamil, and some who like both. And we also have within these subgroups For some, there has been no good film music since the 1960s. For others, it began only thereafter. There are Western classical music performers such as the pianist Anil Srinivasan, and there is musicals on the shop on Mount Road, specializing in music instruments and representing the Trinity Music College of London since 1901. There are die-hard fans of rock and roll, jazz, punk, rock, heavy metal, just about any kind of new age music. Chennai has its own version of the blues, the Gana. The term itself is a Hindi import meaning song. Gana began as music in the poorest sections of society. Its origins are obscure, but it probably evolved as a medium of self-expression, for it deals with day-to-day life in the city. My last passage is titled The City United, because it deals with what I have always cherished about this city that I call home. Despite the many divides within, it is to be noted that there has never been a caste riot or a religious riot in the city. That is, if you discount 17th century history, when a vertical division in society between the left-hand and right-hand castes, detailed of which are hazy as best, caused many headaches to the British. A few years ago, I would not have even brought in this subject, for I was sure that Chennai had risen above divisions, at least in public. Now I am not so sure. Politicians, media, and above all social media are spewing venom, and sadly, I see many Chennai people falling victim to this. All of a sudden, religious and caste divides have come to the fore. Where have people like Valliyammal Muttaya, who after reciting Kandasashti Kavacham would light candles at St. Anthony's altar, vanished? I'm sure they are still around, but their numbers have reduced. For a long time, your religion was a personal matter in Chennai, but we have now degenerated to wearing it on our sleeves. Loudspeakers chanting prayers, evangelical speeches, singing devotional music have just got louder and make me worry about the shape of things to come. And yet I see a lot of hope. Every year, the festival at the Kapalishwara temple takes place for 10 days in the month of Panguni. The number of devotees reaches a peak on the 8th day, when Lord Kapalishwara, accompanied by his consort and sons, comes out in procession. On the 8th day, the press of devotees numbers more than 1 lakh, and the heat too does not help. And this procession begins in the afternoon and wends its way around the 4 streets surrounding the temple tank. It has been customary for donors and devotees to erect water dispensing kiosks known as Tannir Pandals all along the route that devotees take to come to the temple. Buttermilk, water, biscuits, cooked rice flavored with spices are distributed. Some of these Tannir Pandals have histories by themselves, the oldest going back to 1852. In the midst of all the chaos, I also see my office boy, who every year collects money from everyone in my workspace to buy biscuits and distribute them to the pilgrims during this event. His name, Joseph. Why does he do it? He thinks it's a good deed to tend to devotees. I have never asked him why he, a Christian, wants to do this. Such a doubt has arisen in my faction-ridden mind and not in his. I am the one with this question, despite posing to be a secular individual who believes that all are born equal. His thought process is clear. Why should I sully it? And so every Friday, as I watch Joseph wave the camphor plate around the gods in my office as part of the obligatory puja, I am happy. I know there is hope. Yes, to be sure, there are several others who shy away from festivals and celebrations of other religions, but there is also Joseph.
Yes, applause. Thank you for that, Sriram. Let's begin our conversation at the start with the name. You commence the book with that very famous Facebook post, which says, Chennai is the city, Madras is an emotion. In these 6 lines lie the eternal debate, battle of the name. Do they exist harmoniously as they do in the fortnightly newspaper that you bring out, that you're the editor of, Madras Musing, which states, we care about Madras, that is Chennai? Or are they loaded representatives of different identities of the city?
Yes, in my opinion, they are loaded representatives of different identities of the city. And what I feel personally is that Chennai is an official name which we need to accept and we need to move on. It does not in any way change the character of the city, whether it is Madras or Chennai. But there are diehards on both sides. So for instance, the Mylapore Boat Club Road, Arepuram variety would always say, to me, it's always Madras. And then there is the other lot which will say that, you know, in the vernacular, it has always been Chennai. The Tamil writing for centuries has always referred to it as Chennai. So where is the question of Madras? So these are the two sides to it. But what is very interesting is that everybody north of the Vindhyas has consistently pronounced the name wrong. It remained Medros for a long time. Now it is Chennai. So there is absolutely no difference. We haven't changed one way or the other. We are as bad as we were at one point of time.
So it's very interesting because when you read the book, you give the origins of Chennai, you give all the different theories. So let's shift gears to the nature of Chennai, right? It's a city of many firsts. The first regiment of the Indian Army was established there, the oldest bookstore, the railway station, the shopping plaza, in fact, the oldest jail. You craft a chapter in your book called Scoring Centum. So is Chennai this super achiever scoring centum city, or is it that conservative bastion, or a mix of both, or the self-assured city, which in any case doesn't care how the North pronounces Chennai, and a city where wealth and achievement really do whisper, they don't overstate?
Well, the first thing is, I have a feeling that it is a bit of an overachiever as a city because the emphasis that is given on achievement is very, very high. I lived in Calcutta for several years, and that accounts for I studied in Vidya Mandir, by the way, which could have been in Calcutta, because going by when we studied in Vidya Mandir, your academics was something that only your uncle or your aunt worried about. Your parents didn't even know where you were studying, for that matter. And the school considered itself to be a medium for fostering extracurricular activities. That was the only thing. Calcutta as a city is like that. Whereas the whole of Calcutta only works towards Durga Puja for 6 days. And then they talk about Durga Puja for the rest of the time. So that's how it is. So Chennai, on the other hand, is, when I first moved in here and I found that I had a high achiever as my mother-in-law, for instance, who wanted her son-in-law to be good, to be doing well in society. And then my wife who wanted to push me and go do this, go do that, etc. It's a very pushy.
Centum.
Yeah, the centum was an obsession. And I used to hate this word because I was nowhere near centum. I was probably, if there was a reverse of centum, that is what I was getting most of the time. And every time you would have to fall at these relatives' feet, and then they'd tell you, cousin Mohan is now in IIT Madras. You should also become like that. And I resolved that I will never get into IIT Madras ever, because I developed a great hatred for that place. So that was the thing, this obsession with academics, this obsession with children having to do well in everything. So, the average child goes to school and then probably goes for some 25 different other coaching classes. So there is swimming, there is boxing, there is karate, there is Carnatic music, there is Bharatanatyam, and then there is, if possible, Scottish reel dances. You name it and they have it. And the best manifestation of the hyper-aggressive parent is to see them by the side of the swimming pool, and the child will be huffing and puffing in the lane, and father walking up and down. Come on, don't breathe, don't put up your head, look down, look up, look at him, he's finished it in 8 seconds, you've taken 8.5. When will you ever become Max Biondi or some such thing? And then you go and ask the father, sir, have you ever swum in your life? No, but I want my son to get the best of everything in this world. Whether the son wants it, I have no idea. And then by the age of 14, you have to get behind the driving wheel, you have to learn driving. It's one of those places where you're pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and then you've got to keep pushing back and back and back and back all the time. So it is a hyper city as far as expecting many things out of people. And I feel that that's why for a long time it was also the suicide capital of India, especially among school-going children. And which also accounts for the fact that some of the best institutions for mental health have been in Chennai. And one of them is Sneha, which has made it its life's motto to counsel people against suicide by having volunteers 24/7 on a helpline. And they've brought down the suicide rates. And right now, I know last week, the founder of Sneha was invited to the West Indies because the suicide rates has peaked over there among the South Indian population. So this is where we are.
So I think centum, the Latin word, is more used in Chennai
Centum.
than centum. Okay, shifting gears, let's deliberate on the politics.
Mm.
Chennai has been at the epicenter of Tamil Nadu politics. You etch very beautifully in your book the self-respect movement, the Dravidian nature of politics, and how it is a state and the city which, while the constitution states federating with a unitary bias, they have had an emphatic leaning towards federating bias,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
So do you share I mean, you've etched it so beautifully, so I would urge the readers to definitely read the book, but do deliberate upon that.
See, in my opinion, all of it was a needed. So, I would not say, I would say emphatically that the self-respect movement was really the defining moment of the growth of Tamil Nadu. Had there not been a self-respect movement, we would not have had the communal government order of, it's called the communal GO, that's not a name that I'm giving it, in 1921, which mandated reservation. Long before people like Baba Saheb Ambedkar, etc., we had already done that in 1921 with the Justice Party in power. So I think the battle for equality really begins in Chennai, because that is where the whole thing really started. And all of us have been witness to the benefits of that battle for equality. I know, coming from the Brahmin community, it is very easy to just lament about reservation and say that, they took away our seats, etc. But the point here is, it brought about a certain self-identity and a self-confidence among people who benefited from the whole thing. And that, in my opinion, is what led to Dravidian politics, and then to everything that has followed. A lot of social reform measures have come about in Tamil Nadu. And that, I think, we are direct beneficiaries of everything that happened. And some of these social reform measures may have accidentally come about. Like, for instance, the reservation policy gradually reached a stage where there was a great pressure to open up, and then private engineering colleges came up. When private engineering colleges came up, there was a large cadre of engineering graduates. When liberalization came in, lots of automotive companies started coming because there was a large cadre of engineering graduates. Everything has worked towards the advantage of the state because of, I'm a strong believer in equality myself. I don't believe in the caste order. And therefore, I believe that everything that happened to the good as far as this battle. And it's not a battle for equality that has been won. It's not as though everybody has declared that we are equal. But because the pendulum had swung for centuries in the opposite direction, it had to swing, and we have to allow it to swing to a considerable length, to its full amplitude before it comes back to central point. And so we are witnessing that social churn on a continuous basis.
So the 360-degree approach to equality. I know you've touched upon music in your reading, but I want to allude to a larger point, which is the creative expressions that you mention in your book are across spectrums, right? Of music, dance, cuisine, world-class tennis, cricket, cinema, theater. Is there a master druid with his band of followers and a magic potion that allows for such a prolific range of offerings to the citizens? Or is it an organic growth with home chefs, extending for allowing creativity to flow so freely?
In fact, I would say that we are a very creative country. I have had the opportunity to live in several cities, and I have found that each one is creative. There is a druid, obviously, who is churning up a magic potion in each of these locations. It's just that I feel that because I have lived here and I've had the opportunity to see all that much more of what is happening, that I've had the privilege of documenting it. We are, as Indians, I think, an extraordinarily creative community of people, and Chennai has its share of them. That's how I would like to look at it. Yes, certain things did work in its favor. For instance, it became the capital of classical music, of South Indian cinema for a very long time, of theater, and because of its emphasis on language politics, literature, and Tamil publishing. So all of that did have a lot. So because of that, we did have a lot of creativity, and much of it has been documented. That's how I would put it.
So the range of book is really Himalayan. I could just cover a few features and get Sriram's voice on this. So yeah, I do have one question in mind. You know, in the book that you do write, you quote the scholar S.S. Pandian, and you speak about the geography of Chennai. How has the geography of Chennai textured the city? It's, you know, the north-south, east-west axis. How does it affect the city's rhythms? And you have the long coast on one side.
So, you know, one thing is, because like, it's very interesting that all the four principal cities of pre-independent India, the southern half became the upmarket neighborhood, and the northern half is where the history
This
really
would be
began.
the Tiruvanmiyur.
The southern half is everything starting, of course, to me, Mylapore is the center of the world. It's not just the center, it's the intellectual center of the world. So,
The museum city.
yeah, Mylapore onward, shall I put it that way? Then, you know, you have the northern half, which is where all the history is, and which is sadly a very neglected neighborhood.
Forgotten sector.
Completely. Then we have these regions in the west of which we South Madras people know very little. We just wish them well, and we hope that they are doing well in regions such as Anna Nagar, which are closer to Bangalore than what Mylapore is. So we wish Anna Nagar. And so we have these individual quirks and characters. Certainly my wife, every time we cross Cathedral Road and we are driving home, she'd say, back to civilization. So this kind of thing. So we are these South Madras snobs. So there is this, you know, the geography, because of the fact that it began in the north, and then the city began to gradually expand into the south. But what is very interesting is that the absent quarter, which is the east, which is the sea, that is what gives everything to the city. That is through which everybody from the Romans and the Greeks, everybody came that way. The British came that way, the Portuguese, the Danes, the Dutch, the French, everybody came like that. The construction of the harbor is what transformed the city into what this metropolis is. And today everybody looks out at the sea to see where they can go from here and come back. So that is really the mother of this whole metropolis that I call home today. Thank you.
What a pleasure. Thank you from the team at Bangalore Literature Festival. Been a real pleasure to read your book and to hear your voice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very kind of you to have invited me.